Hi all, Bones here from Oz BSA Bantams, and after our last video when I had all the hassles of trying to get this sprocket off and I made up the puller, still didn't work, and we're going to have to cut it off. Well, this has turned up. So a new sprocket, so I'm going to start taking it to this with the angle grinder, and what I'm going to have to effectively do is, and I'll show you on this sprocket, is cut it down through there. Keep turning around, cut it down so I can actually withdraw the crankshaft through the engine case. What I'm going to do after that is split the crank, set up the flywheel on the lathe and machine off the last bits of the sprocket, and hopefully I'll get down to a smaller diameter without even touching the crankshaft. So I'll better get stuck into it. So there we have it. So that's the end result of giving a trim up with the grinder. And what we'll do now is get some heat onto that case and try and drive the bearing and everything through. So we've got the heat gun going on it, get the engine case nice and warm, expand the case, and then I'll put a piece of pipe here to go on the sprocket, decent hammer, give it a tap, and hopefully it'll be finally out. Just got it. Glasses back on. It should come out. Okay, I'm going to try and see. So just there is a bearing that's come out, and to the right of that bearing there's another ring that's coming out, and that's a lab seal. So the sprocket that I've cut is actually so going from left to right, there's that bearing, the lab seal, another bearing, and the sprocket. So this lab seal's sort of hanging up a little bit. I mean, ideally that would have been a press fit in there, but I can't fit it in. A press. So I'm just gently trying to tap it, keep heat up to it, and get it out without hopefully doing any damage to it. But she's still fighting me all the way. So after much gnashing of teeth, here it is, finally. It's a day and a half's work just to get that crank out. So what we've got from this side here is bearing, Labyrinth Seal, and other your primary drive bearing. Now these bearings are shot. They rock. And the Labyrinth Seal is not much better. The problem is, I don't know where you can barely see it, I'll try and... There's not much gap there between the bearing and the original sprocket. My other problem is, once I split it and I start to machine it, I'm a bit worried about I'll put a fair bit of heat into this, so how hard it is. The other problem is, I don't know what the taper angle is because I can't measure it. So what I might do is machine it down where I think it's going to be, and just slowly just file it off. If I end up with a flat on there, so be it, but at least it's off. But I can't get a puller behind it, and puller never worked anyway, so and I can't cut the bearings off because you've got the lab seal sitting between it as well. So we're not there yet, but we're making headway. Stuff. Alrighty, so what's happened was the sprocket that I bought, I measured the dimensions of that, and I've calculated out that the taper that this boss is sitting on is a 9-degree included angle. So once I remove a fair bit of the material, I'll set the compound slide here on the lathe to 4.5 degrees, and then I'll be able to shave it down a bit closer, hopefully to match the taper that the the crankshaft's in. You can see here, still got the con rod in, so I've taped that up so it can't obviously flail around. But when I'm on the lathe, what I usually do if I'm putting a crank in, I just have a bungee cord if I've got to polish up crank journals or something like that. So we'll get into it and we'll see how we go. I haven't touched this with the tool yet, so it'll be interesting to see how hard it's going to be. Okay, so what we've got now is the bulk of that sprocket's now been machined off, and I'm going to reset the compound slide on the lathe and start taper turning it and see how close I can get. Okay, so this is where we're at. Hopefully you can see that. So what I've done is I've machined it down nearly to the same taper, and that line across there is a bit hard to pick up. I've just given that a bit of a crack with a cold chisel, just to crack it, and I'm about to see if I can peel this off, hopefully. Oh! There you have it. And there goes my screwdriver. Right, royally welded on, that's for sure. There's still a piece there. God. Oh, you prick, I knew that was going to happen. Come on. Okay, I've got it done without mullering up anything on the crankshaft, so I'm pretty happy about that. Obviously, there's a bit of heat discoloration there from all the heat I've tried to put into it over the journey, but give it that a polish. Everything actually looks all right. This crank's going to come apart, and new con rod kit and everything going in, but with all the corrosion on it, once it's split, I'll get rid of all the corrosion, clean it all up before I press it back together with the new rod. But geez, that took a bit of getting off, didn't it? Wow. Okay, that's the thickness of the shard that was left on, that I machined, and I still had to split it, and I still had to get a screwdriver underneath it to lift it off. So that's probably less than a millimetre thick. All those lines of where I dragged the tool back across it, but I just lineaged a tiny little bit down, just gave it a tap with the cold chisel across there, and it split it, but it just still wouldn't come off. I had to get that screwdriver underneath it and lever everything off. So she's well and truly stuck. Yeah. Big job, that one. Just thought I'd also show you this. This is the Labyrinth Seal that sits. You've got your primary drive on either bearings on either side. So crank over here, primary drive bearing, Lab Seal, another bearing, and then we had that sprocket on. So you can see all the little grooves in there. Labyrinth Seals don't use rubber. They use really close clearance and a set of grooves. You see a lot of them in gas turbines and things like that, and I'm not sure how many other two-strokes I know of that actually use Labyrinth Seals in them. But anyway, I've got a new one of these anyway, because once they wear out a little bit in the internal diameter, if they do, they lose their ability to seal. But anyway, Lab Seal. Alright, let's have a crack at pressing this crank out. Now my only issue is, I can't remember what this this press is rated at, I think, 12 tonnes. So, and of course when you're doing these, you get a heap of pressure on them, and then they go bang and frighten the living crap out of you. So we will see how we go. Centralise that a bit better. No worries at all. Yeah, it's got a fair bit of corrosion on the inside that needs cleaning up. The actual conrod actually feels alright. I'll go over and take them out so I don't lose all the rolling elements in case it is alright. There's no movement in it, but there's a fair bit of corrosion around the rod and that, so I'll go and have a look, and then we might press the rest of the kingpin out. Okay, so there we have it. Crank is apart. You can see the amount of corrosion on the inside of the crank. The actual rod and the rolling elements, well, they're serviceable, put it that way. None of the rolling elements have got corrosion on them. They've got fair wear on them, but it doesn't really matter because I'm putting a brand new rod kit in, because as I've said before, stuff for Jawas is cheap. So Jesus, I think a whole rod kit was only about 30 or 40 Australian dollars, so not very much at all. So yeah, that's where I want it to be. Now it's back onto clean up all the engine cases and parts so they can get away to get vapor blasted, and we'll keep progressing with the old Jawa. I've got a fair bit on in the workshop at the moment at Oz Bantams, so got this race bike here for a bit of work on. Engine's got to come out and get a bit of work on it, and over there on the bench is a Virago XV 1100 Yamaha, some mate of mine, so I'm doing a bit of work on that. So over here we've got the rest of the Jawa bits, and they're all being brought out to be cleaned, and I'll start paint stripping and getting some primer on them. So let's all go.